So you're ready to get your resume done and you want to get it done as quickly as possible. I'm here today to help you get through the process from the beginning to the end. My name is Amanda Hill. I'm with the Workforce Centers of South Central Kansas. A lot of times when we are getting ready to create a resume, we want to just sit at the computer and start filling in one of those templates. But I do want to caution you on that. You really want to take a little bit extra time to think about what you want to include in your resume, because you want to target this resume to the employer that you're going to be applying to. Because we can send out hundreds of resumes to hundreds of different employers, but if it isn't specifically targeted to them, they're probably not going to, be very impressed with your resume, if you will. It's not going to be as eye-catching or wowing or any of those things. And so I generally tell this story about somebody wanting me to help with their resume. And I kept asking, where are you going to be applying, so that we could help kind of target this resume and make sure that it was going to be something that the employer was going to find appealing. And it took them a minute to realize why I kept asking that question. And finally they were like, you think about resumes the way I think about haircuts, because they were a barber. And, anybody can sit down in his chair and ask for a haircut, but, what kind of haircut do you want? Do you want a bald fade? Do you want this or that and the other? And he used a lot more fancier language than I did. But just like he can give anybody a haircut, are they going to be happy when they leave? Just like you can send out any kind of resume, is the employer going to be impressed with the resume you send? So that's why you really do need to put more thought process into your resume before just going to sit at a computer and filling in some blanks on the template there for you. So I'm going to talk about the steps for that. So this section of the class is going to actually be several parts. I'm going to make them in smaller videos. So the sections that we will cover within this class, resume start to finish. The first one will be on reflection. We will also have a video over analyzing, a video over strategizing, and then the last video will be jumping to that template section, actually getting to the computer and putting everything to work for you. And so you can anticipate there will be 4 sections to this class. So here we go with the very first section. So the reflection stage is really important because this allows you to go back and think about your work history. Granted, not all of your work history may be relevant to the job you're getting ready to apply to, but going back and thinking about all of the jobs you've held, even the ones that maybe you've held many, many years ago, might be helpful in you being able to sell yourself to this next job that you're getting ready to apply to. So you want to think about the employers you've had, the positions and titles you've held, the duties you've done, dates of employment. What happens a lot of times, because we want to get all this on paper, is sometimes we get that brain fog and we just kind of go blank. And so I really encourage people to really just make this process as easy and not as stressful, more of a brainstorming stage. Put it on paper, not necessarily typing it up, filling in blanks. Really just begin thinking about some of your past and getting as much on paper as you can during this brainstorm process. So you might think about, what places have you previously worked at in the past as the first step, whether you're drawing pictures or just scribbling or however you want to do this to kind of get all of those thoughts on paper. And then, of course, your job titles. And in some places, you may have worked at more than one place, not more than one place, rather, had more than one position at any one place. And so your duties, of course, were probably different based on the position in which you held. So then once you kind of, okay, yeah, I did this there and that there, now start thinking about all those duties in which you held. And so essentially, what this reflection piece is doing is it's kind of getting you prepared to create what we would call a master resume. And a master resume you never send to an employer. However, it is something that you can kind of pick and choose from as you begin targeting your resume for all these employers in which you're going to be applying to. So as mentioned before, you can send the same resume to all the employers, but that's probably not going to be impressive to most of them. So how many resumes are you going to have? You're probably asking, right? You really should have a new resume for each employer that you're applying to. And not necessarily that you're going to be starting over from scratch each time. However, you're probably going to tweak this resume a little bit, whether that's changing some verbiage, adding some things, removing some things on that resume. Okay. And so generally, you're only going to go back about 10 years on your resume because, age discrimination isn't supposed to happen, but it does sometimes. And so that's just kind of the general rule of thumb is normally you wouldn't go back any more than 10 years. However, there are some times which the jobs we held more than 10 years ago might be relevant to the job we're getting ready to apply to. So you're going to need to figure out how you can talk about those skills that you had learned years ago and get it on your resume without necessarily reflecting your age per se. And so we're going to talk about that later. But that's why you would want to reflect further back than the 10 years on your work history so that you can make sure that you're not forgetting any skills that you may have learned previously. Okay. And so with this master resume, like I said, you're able to pick and choose kind of what you use. It's just a really good way to keep a rolling record of all of your work history. And again, that's something you're not going to actually send to an employer, just going to be something that you can pick and choose from as you can begin creating all of your different resumes as you apply to each new job. So when it gets to the point of, really diving into the things that you did at these employers, your duties. Again, it's something that a lot of times I see that we're kind of too vague on our resumes. They may just have one word. So for example, let's say they worked at Burger King. I might see them write customer service as a bullet. They were a cashier as a bullet. They were a cook as a bullet, a birthday party host, whatever the situation was. But kind of just some one word items here. And so you do want to be more specific. And sometimes coming up with the right words or the verbiage to use can also be something that kind of puts on that mental block for you and gets you stuck in your tracks and you're just stuck with your resume. So that's where this brainstorming process and not worrying about the verbiage yet kind of helps. So with this one, again, I'm thinking just take it back to pen and paper. Get out a pen and paper to do what I would call like a mind map, probably something you did in elementary, but it can help you down the road here with your resume. It can help you in the future when you begin writing additional resumes after you've gained some more work history. So for this, I generally will ask people if they had this on their resume, customer service, cashier, cook. Well, what does customer service look like? What did that mean for you? Tell me more about how you performed customer service. So what exactly does a cashier do? A cook, again, what did you cook? How did you cook? Ask yourself some of these questions. And then you'll be able to add things to your mind map here. So for customer service, for example, well, I resolved customer complaints. I answered their questions. I greeted customers. Okay, so now we're talking. I've got some things that I can actually really work with and add some value to my resume in showing exactly what I did. As a cashier, I took orders, I tendered payments. As a cook, I prepared salads, I operated the fryer and the broiler. As a birthday party host, I set up tables, I filled large orders, and I cleaned up. And so from here, you might even be able to dig a little bit further. I'm going to elaborate on this section here, like cleaned up. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, I swept the floors. Okay, did you use a mop? Did you use a broom? So you might even be able to dig out, what kind of tools you used or programs, if it's a computer program, so you can get a little bit more specific. Because it might come in handy, down the road. But just getting some of this stuff on paper will not only help you write your resume, but it's also going to prepare you, even when you go to the interview, because now you've kind of refreshed your memory on the things that you've done. So you can talk about your skill set a little bit easier because now you've refreshed your memory about all the things that you know how to do, and how you might be an asset to the next employer. That really summarizes step one, the reflection stage. So again, step one is really, taking out all the formality out of the equation, getting your thoughts on paper, understanding what you've done in the past so that you can begin picking and choosing what you're going to include in your resume. Okay. We will move on to section two.